Am I on today? Is it on? Get all the wires straight here. Sorry. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Linda Road Church of Christ. Our topic this morning for the Bible study is Epic of God, Part 1. Part 2 will be given probably in 2019, so you can review these courses. They'll be recorded on this course. It's been recorded. It's on our website, so if you'd like to review over the years so you'll know where we're at when we get there, you'll have the history fresh in your mind at that point. The learning objective of this course was not to teach you every nuance that can be found in the Old Testament, let alone chase any rabbit trail that a lot of people like to go on for different aspects that we across as we study Genesis and read the story. The learning objective was just to become familiar with the story, so that when we do review those nuances that people like to get into, you will at least be able to compare it to what the story is, what is actually said there. We're currently in chapter 28, and we're being introduced to or getting to know Jacob's family. If you recall, we looked at Abraham's family, Isaac's family, and now we're getting into Jacob's family. We've also been watching the dynamics of these these families, the different interactions that have been going on between all the different members, the different promises, the different kinds of things they get themselves into as families, and the people that they meet and interact with. And guess what? That's going to continue. That type of interaction continues as we get into Jacob's family, and we get into the different relationships that develop on this. Before we get started, let's have a word of prayer. Our Father in heaven, we're thankful that we can study this word that you've given us so that we can understand some of the things that have happened in the past that point to the present, the dynamics that go on in the families of history. We're also grateful for the lessons it teaches us. And may we attempt to live them in our lives and to learn from them. Pray that you'll be with us as we go through this study. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. This is a rendering of Jacob meeting Laban, who's the father of those two gals that are kind of behind there. Anybody remember their names? Leah and Rachel. Now, just before we get into the story, what do you know about Leah and Rachel? Eddie said one of them was uglier than a mud fence. I think it says something about weak eyes, but anyway. Oh, it would hurt you looking at her. Okay. That's one interpretation. And, Rachel was apparently more attractive than Leah was. And they were sisters. We're going to look at some dynamics as to, we're just going to notice what happens as you read the story. How can you tell the difference between two sisters is what I would entitle this lesson if we were going to entitle it. Because as all of us know the stories, Jacob thought he was getting one and got the other. And then a week later he got the one that he thought he was going to get. So it's an interesting dynamic. For us guys, we go, how in the world can that happen? For the gals, I guess, why would that happen? And it just becomes interesting as you look at this dynamics. One of the things we should not do is apply today's standards and ethics and culture to this time frame, but to read it for what it is. Chapter 28. Let's begin the story this morning. Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and commanded him. And just as a note here for those who weren't here last week, you know that Jacob and Esau were brothers, and Jacob, with the help of his mother and at the directions of his mother, deceived his father Isaac, and was able then received a blessing from Isaac. So we're at the point where Esau is upset about this fact, and so Rebekah wants her son Jacob to leave so that her other son Esau will not kill Jacob at a certain time. So she sets this particular situation. So again, Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and commanded him, "You must not marry a Canaanite woman. Go to the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, in northwest Mesopotamia. Laban, your mother's brother, lives there. Marry one of his daughters." The command was marry one of his daughters. Did you catch that? "May God Almighty bless you and give you many children, and may you become a group of many people. May He give you and your descendants the blessing of Abraham, so that you may own the land where you are now living as a stranger, the land of God gave to Abraham." So Isaac, Jacob to northwest Mesopotamia, to Laban, the brother of Rebekah. Bethuel the Aramean was the father of Laban and Rebekah was the mother of Jacob and Esau. Got to remember all these family trees here, all these family lines. You know, it's kind of like having a player's card. You just got to know who's who. Esau learned that Isaac had blessed Jacob and sent him to northwest Mesopotamia. All right. There's another slide I'd like to get to, if somebody could help advance that for me. And to find a wife there. He also learned that Isaac had commanded Jacob not to marry a Canaanite woman. You might recall Esau married a couple of Canaanite women, and the scriptures say that they caused so much trouble for Isaac and Rebekah and Rachel, or Isaac and his wife. I'll get names here in a minute. And so Esau learned that Isaac had blessed Jacob, sent him northwest Mesopotamia, and commanded him not to marry Canaanite woman. Let's see. All right, very good. Thank you. Yeah, we'll get there in a minute. And that Jacob had obeyed his father and mother and had gone to northwest Mesopotamia. So Esau saw that his father Isaac did not want his sons to marry Canaanite women, even though he already had. Now Esau already had wives, but he went to Ishmael's son of Abraham. He married Mahalath, Ishmael's daughter. Mahalath was the sister of Nebaioth, and you may recall that Nebaioth is Ishmael's oldest son. It's just interesting how these interactions took place at this time. So there we have a beginning part when Jacob leaves. Jacob left Beersheba and set out for Haran. Now you may recall Haran is way up north. So he's going all the way from the southern part there of this map all the way up to the northern part. And on the way, and when he came to a place, he spent the night there because the sun had set. He found a stone and laid his head on it to go to sleep. Okay, I want to just stop here. How many sleep on a stone for a pillow? He does? Mike sleeps on stones? Well, he's in the Army, so it's all right. Army sleeps on stones. But I just find that interesting that he would use a pillow to sleep on. I mean, did he lay something over it? Never, it's all those questions that come up. But he did. He used a stone. Jacob dreamed that there was a ladder resting on the earth and reaching up into heaven. And he saw angels of God going up and coming down the ladder. Then Jacob saw the Lord standing above the ladder, and he said, "I am the Lord, the God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are now sleeping. Your descendants will be as many as the dust of the earth. They will spread west and east, north and south, and all the families of the earth will be blessed through you and your descendants. I am with you and will protect you everywhere you go and will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you." Where have you heard this promise before? It was to Abraham, to Isaac, and now to Jacob. Then Jacob woke from his sleep and said, "Surely God is in this place, but I did not know it." He was afraid and said, "This place frightens me. It is surely the house of God and the gate of heaven." Jacob rose early in the morning and took the stone he had slept on and set it up on its end. Then he poured olive oil on top of it. At first, the name of that city was Luz. Then Jacob named it Bethel, that is, the house of God. Then Jacob made a promise. He said, I want God to be with me and to protect me on this journey. I want Him to give me food to eat and clothes to wear, so I will be able to return in peace to my father's house. If the Lord does these things, He will be my God. I think it's interesting that he throws in there, if the Lord will do this. He kind of makes it conditional. This stone which I have set up on its end will be the house of God, and I will give God 1/10 of all He gives me. So here he makes a promise to give 1/10 of what he has. Now that particular chapter, that's not so exciting, is it? We haven't got to the part where, we go, oh my. But when he's up there he's working for his father-in-law, and guess what? Jacob gets tricked. Now, one of the things I found fascinating about these families is that there's a lot of trickery going on. There's deception going on. And it's just like, wow, what do you do about all that? For some, chapter 29 may be uncomfortable to read. For others, it may be fascinating. But yet for others, it may be a good reason why I don't want to believe the Bible. If you don't want to believe the Bible, you can come up with any reason, but here's a chapter that some people look at and go, this just can't happen this way. God just won't allow things like this. But all I'm going to say to you is this is Scripture. We're not going to chase a rabbit trail. We're just going to be fascinated by the fact that the Bible gives all the details of human interaction. So let's begin that journey. Do we have everybody in here over the age of 13? Okay, PG-13 now. Then Jacob continued his journey and came to the land of the people of the east. He looked and saw a well in the field and 3 flocks of sheep lying nearby because they drank water from this well. A large stone covered the mouth of the well. When all the flocks would gather there, the shepherd would roll the stone away from the well and water the sheep. Then they would put the stone back in place. He said to the shepherds there, my brothers, where are you from? They answered, we are from Haran. And then Jacob asked, do you know Laban, grandson of Nahor? They answered, we know him. Then Jacob asked, how is he? They answered, he is well. Look, his daughter Rachel is coming now with his sheep. Jacob said, but look, it is still the middle of the day. It is not time for the sheep to be gathered for the night. So give them water and let them go back into the pasture. But they said, we cannot do that until all the flocks are gathered. Then we will roll away the stone from the mouth of the well and water the sheep. Makes sense, doesn't it? You roll it once, everybody gets water, then you roll it back and everybody goes their separate ways. So you just wait until everybody can get there. While Jacob was talking with the shepherds, Rachel came with her father's sheep because it was her job to care for the sheep. When Jacob saw Laban's daughter Rachel and Laban's sheep, he went to the well and rolled the stone from its mouth and watered Laban's sheep. Now Laban was the brother of Rebekah, Jacob's mother. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and cried. He told her that he was from her father's family and that he was the son of Rebekah, so Rachel ran home and told her father. He greeted her with a kiss. It wasn't like 2 lovers running to each other kind of scenario. He saw her, he greeted her with a kiss, and he cried because he had found people that he was looking for. When Laban heard the news about his sister's son Jacob, he ran to meet him. Laban hugged him and kissed him and brought him to his house, where Jacob told Laban everything that had happened. Then Laban said, you are my own flesh and blood. So you get Jacob back with his mother's family, brother's family. And so he stayed there a month. Then Laban said to Jacob, you are my relative, but it's not right for you to work for me without pay. What would you like me to pay you? What an open-ended question. Now, this is an interesting dynamics. He says, you're my relative, but I don't really, it's not fair that you work for free. I know of a lot of relatives that would just assume you work for free. And so, but he is dealing fairly with his relative here, and he says, what would you like me to pay you? Now, I'm thinking by the hour. Pay me by the hour, right? Maybe a salary. No. Now, Laban had 2 daughters. The older was Leah, and the younger was Rachel. Leah had weak eyes, but Rachel was very beautiful. Weak eyes. Couldn't see well. Or she didn't look so hot. One of the two. Jacob loved Rachel, so he said to Laban, let me marry your younger daughter Rachel, if you will. I will work 7 years for you. Laban said, it would be better for her to marry you than someone else, so stay here with me. I'm not sure that's a ringing endorsement. It's better to marry you than somebody else. So Jacob worked for Laban 7 years so he could marry Rachel, but they seemed like just a few days to him because he loved Rachel very much. Anybody ever felt that way? Time just went like that. Apparently it did for him. He worked. He had this gal in mind. She was apparently cute. The other one not so cute. He had his heart set on this one. 7 years he labored, but it seemed like a few days. After 7 years, Jacob said to Laban, give me Rachel so that I can marry her. The time I promised to work for you is over. Let's get it done. So Laban gave a feast for all the people there. That evening he brought his daughter Leah to Jacob, and they had sexual relations. Let's stop for just a moment before we get further along. Most of you are going, at least I did when I heard this story the first time. How in the world can that happen? That you get mixed up on the wedding night of who the wife is. Laban gave his, and keep it reading here, Laban gave his slave girl Zilpah to his daughter to be her servant. In the morning, when Jacob saw that he had sexual relations with Leah, he said to Laban, what have you done to me? I worked hard for you so that I could marry Rachel. Why did you trick me? Now here's where the rabbit trails could go that we won't go too far down. Is why this happened. How in the world can Jacob, apparently a guy with good eyes as opposed to weak eyes, can't tell the difference between one and the other? You have your own reasoning probably because it was dark, right? The lights were out. Couldn't see. She showed up in a veil. You couldn't tell the difference. It was a veil. It had been 7 years. You were so in love. You couldn't tell the difference. I read one story that said they were, Leah and Rachel were actually twins. And so they were more or less identical enough to where he just couldn't tell the difference in the dark. I don't know. I don't know why he was confused. We all snicker about it, we grin about it, and it's just a story that when you read through it, it's kind of like, why did Laban trick him? Well, Laban says in verse 26, in our country we do not allow the younger daughter to marry before the older daughter. But complete the full week of marriage ceremony with Leah, and I will give you Rachel to marry also. But you must serve me another 7 years. For the longest, I thought that he had to wait 7 more years before he got Rachel. But the reality of it, when you actually just read the scriptures and accept what it says, he had to wait a week after marrying Leah to get Rachel. And then for the next 7 years, he worked for Laban, and he had 2 wives, and the family grew from there. And we'll see that in just a second. So Jacob did this, and when he had completed the week with Leah, Laban gave him his daughter Rachel as a wife. Laban gave his slave girl Bilhah to his daughter Rachel to be her servant. So Jacob had sexual relations with Rachel also, and Jacob loved Rachel more than Leah. And Jacob worked for Laban another 7 years. What are your thoughts on this? Guys, what do you think? Any guy would like this situation? Oh, you? No. Yes. You have some? Right, the scriptures only says she has weak eyes. It doesn't. Well, yeah. Come on, ladies. Was she ugly? Tender. Okay, she was. She had tender eyes. But we haven't got there yet. Don't get too far ahead. Yeah. We're just at the relationship where they get married, you know. We're not there yet. That's a great story in of itself. Anyway, that's what the scriptures talk about, say. So anywhere you go from there is just speculation. You can go to different scriptures and refer back to it. But the point is, Jacob got tricked, didn't he? But then again, the reason why he's there kind of balance out. You know, you reap what you sow, so to say. He had, yes. So trickery was in the family, but somehow they made it happen. Verse 31. When the Lord saw that Jacob loved Rachel more than Leah, he made it possible for Leah to have children, but not Rachel. Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Reuben because she said, "The Lord has seen my troubles. Surely now my husband will love me." I meant to go to this particular session when I was beginning that. Rachel and Leah listening while Jacob and Laban bargained over the terms of Jacob's marriage to Rachel. Can you imagine that particular discussion? I don't know if the two gals were nearby when they were listening to what their dad was bargaining with, but I mean it depicts that there was some conversation going on and there was a deal struck. And so the marriages happened. And so we see that Leah here has the first child. Leah became pregnant again and gave birth to another son. She named him Simeon and said, "The Lord has heard that I am not loved, so he has given me this son." Leah became pregnant again and gave birth to another son. She named him Levi and said, "Now surely my husband will be close to me because I have given him 3 sons." Then Leah gave birth to another son. She named him Judah because she said, "Now I will praise the Lord." Then Leah stopped having children. Now, one of these things, observations, we read, what about, 4, 5, 6 verses? Now, everybody realizes that children aren't born in 6 verses, right? All right, so there's at least 90 days. Is that right? 9 months, sorry. What's that? That's for cats. Sorry, I got it mixed up with cats. But there's some time between here. You know, you got 9 months-ish, and there's some lead time into that 9 months. And so you're dealing with several years. Even though the scriptures clearly point out that Jacob loved Rachel more than Leah, or Leah, depending on where you're from, he did visit her. He did see her often. Chapter 30. When Rachel saw that she was not having children for Jacob, she envied her sister Leah. She said to Jacob, "Give me children or I'll die." Anybody ever felt that way, ladies? I mean, we are a little smarter now about medical things, so it's, you know, definitely wasn't the guy's fault at that time. But we do know that the Lord intervened and kept her from having children. So Jacob became angry with her and said, "Can I do what only God can do? He is the one who has kept you from having children." Then Rachel said, here we go again, guys. Then Rachel said, "Here is my slave girl Bilhah. Have sexual relations with her so she can give birth to a child for me. Then I can have my own family through her." Where have we heard this before? With Sarah. Now, we could fault her for this. We could say a lot of things about this, applying today's cultural feelings and morality of today. But having a child back in that day running around, your child, your own child, was a big deal for those women back then. It was culturally shameful if you didn't have a child, for many of them. And so she felt that through her slave girl, she could raise up a family. So Rachel gave Bilhah, her slave girl, to Jacob for a wife, and he had sexual relations with her. She became pregnant and gave Jacob a son. Rachel said, God has judged me innocent. He has listened to my prayer and has given me a son. So she named him Dan. Now, if you're a mother, and I know many in here are a mother, would you appreciate somebody else naming your child? How do you think Bilhah felt when her child was named by her mistress? We don't know, but I just wonder about that. Bilhah became pregnant again and gave Jacob a second son. Rachel said, I struggled hard with my sister, and I have won. So she named that son Naphtali. What did she win? Leah saw that she had stopped having children, so she gave her slave girl, Zilpah, to Jacob as a wife. Then Zilpah had a son. Leah said, I am lucky. So she named him Gad. Zilpah gave birth to another son, and Leah said, I am very happy. Now women will call me happy. So she named him Asher. During the wheat harvest, Reuben, meanwhile, see how the dynamics of this family is going? You know, we're talking years here. We're talking quite a bit of time lag that's going on. So don't read this as one verse leading into another verse, but there's time going on. These different things are happening. Reuben went into the field and found some mandrakes. Reuben had to be a few years old by now. And so he found these mandrake plants and brought them to his mother Leah. But Rachel said to Leah, please give me some of your son's mandrakes. Leah answered, you have already taken away my husband, and now you are trying to take away my son's mandrakes? Now, you stop just for a moment, you see these two women interacting in this verse. There's a bit of jealousy going on. There's a bit of hard feelings between the two, but they're trying to deal with each other. But Rachel answered, if you will give me your son's mandrakes, you may sleep with Jacob tonight. You notice they didn't ask Jacob about this. There wasn't any discussion with him. When Jacob came in from the field that night, Leah went out to meet him. She said, you will be with me tonight. Although I tamed that up a little bit. She said, you will have sexual relations with me tonight because I have paid for you with my son's mandrakes. So Jacob slept with her that night. Then God answered Leah's prayer. She became pregnant again. She gave birth to a fifth son and said, God has given me what I paid for because I gave my slave girl to my husband. So Leah named her son Issachar. Leah became pregnant again and gave birth to a sixth son. She said, God has given me a fine gift. Now surely Jacob will honor me because I have given him 6 sons. So she named him Zebulun. Later, Leah gave birth to a daughter and named her Dinah. Then God Rachel and answered her prayer, making it possible for her to have children. When she became pregnant and gave birth to a son, she said, God has taken away my shame. And she named him Joseph. Rachel said, I wish the Lord would give me another son. Now you see all the hoopla, if you will, about the sons they're having. And they have one daughter named Dinah. There's not much said about that, at least in this text. Kind of sad, isn't it? I think it is. But, of course, the story is not about Dinah, unfortunately. The internet, to me, the dynamics are quite interesting here. His family grows, and if you look at the family tree, you can see how all that interacts there as you review it. And so you continue on with this story. this family that's interacting with each other. After the birth of Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, "Now let me go to my own home and country. Give me my wives and my children and let me go. I have earned them by working for you, and you know that I have served you well." So how many years are we at? About 14, right? 14 years here. Jacob answered, "You know that I have worked hard for you." Well, Laban said to him, "If I have pleased you, please stay. I know the Lord has blessed me because of you. Tell me what I should pay you, and I will give it to you." Laban knew a good thing when he saw it. His prosperity had increased also because this young man had come into his family's, into his life. He didn't want to lose a good thing. You know, he didn't want him to go. He didn't want to see that walk out the door, if you will, or across the way there. Jacob answered, "You know that I have worked hard for you, and your flocks have grown while I cared for them. When I came, you had little, but now you have very much. Every time I did something for you, the Lord blessed you. But when will I be able to do something for my own family?" Jacob wanted to take off. He wanted to get moving. Laban asked, "Then what should I give you?" Jacob answered, "I don't want you to give me anything. Just do this one thing, and I will come back and take care of your flocks. Today, let me go through all your flocks. I will take every speckled or spotted sheep, every black lamb, and every spotted or speckled goat. That will be my pay. In the future, you can easily see if I am honest. When you come to look at my flocks, if I have any goat that isn't speckled or spotted, or any lamb that isn't black, you will know I stole it." Laban answered, "Agreed, we will do what you ask." But that day, Laban took away all the male goats that had streaks or spots, all the speckled and spotted female goats, all those that had white on them, and all the black sheep. He told his sons to watch over them. Then he took these animals to a place that was 3 days' journey away from Jacob. Jacob took care of all the flocks that were left. Who's being honest with whom? So Jacob cut green branches from popular almond and plane trees. I'm not sure what plane trees are, but I'm sure they were interesting. I should have looked that one up. And peeled off some of the bark so that the branches had white stripes on them. He put the branches in front of the flocks at the watering places. When the animals came to drink, they also mated there. So the flocks mated in front of the branches. Then the young that were born were streaked, speckled, or spotted. Jacob separated the young animals from the others, and he made them face the streaked and dark animals in Laban's flock. Jacob kept his animals separate from Laban's. When the stronger animals in the flock were mating, Jacob put the branches before their eyes so they could mate near the branches. But when the weaker animals mated, Jacob did not put the branches there. So the animals born from the weaker animals were Laban's, and those born from the stronger animals were Jacob's. In this way, Jacob became very rich. He had large flocks, many male and female servants, camels and donkeys. Anybody tried that as a farmer or a rancher? You want speckled cattle, you put a branch out in front. What a story, huh? Whose hand do you think was involved in this? I think God's hand was involved in this. Kept watch over him. And so, when we also just go back in time a little bit, you remember when Abraham, his flocks were mighty. You know, he and Lot had to separate because they were large. You get to Jacob's at this point, his holdings, if you will, the animals he has are just tremendous. And so he's got a large organization that he's now running. Now you could say, well, he has a bunch of sons now, so that's helpful. Well, it is, but he also has servants. He has lots of people working for him. He's got a pretty good-sized corporation going. Pretty good-sized corporation. And not only does he have to deal with the business end of it, but then he has to come home and his wives tell him where he needs to go. All right, so he's got several things going on in his life. And plus, he wants to go away. Don't have to go in there. So, in chapter 31, one day, Jacob heard Laban's sons talking. They said, Jacob has taken everything our father owned, and in this way he has become rich. Then Jacob noticed that Laban was not as friendly as he had been before. The Lord said to Jacob, go back to the land where your ancestors live, and I will be with you. So Jacob told Rachel and Leah to meet him in the field where he kept his flocks. He said to them, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to finish this exciting story, but we're going to get as far as we can get. He said to them, I have seen that your father is not as friendly towards me as he used to be, but the God of my father has been with me. You both know that I have worked as hard as I could for your father, but he cheated me and changed my pay 10 times. But God has not allowed your father to harm me. When Laban said, you can have all the speckled animals as your pay, all the animals gave birth to speckled young ones. But when he said, you can have all the streaked animals as your pay, all the flocks gave birth to streaked babies. So God has taken the animals away from your father and has given them to me. I had a dream during this season. When the flocks were mating, I saw that the only male goats who were mating were streaked, speckled, or spotted. The angel of the God spoke to me in that dream and said, Jacob? I answered, yes. The angel said, look, only the streaked, speckled, or spotted male goats are mating. I have seen all the wrong things Laban has done to you. I am the God who appeared to you in Bethuel, where you poured olive oil on the stone you set up on it, and where you made a promise to me. Now I want you to leave here and go back to the land where you were born. Now keep in mind, remember that promise, if God will do these things for me? Well, now he's kind of like been reminded of that. Rachel and Leah answered to Jacob, our father has nothing to give us when he dies. He has treated us like strangers. He sold us to you. Then he spent all the money you paid for us. God took all this wealth from our father, and now it belongs to us and our children. So do whatever God has told you to do. They're very supportive at this point, aren't they? They've seen what's happened. They've seen the way their father has treated Jacob. They've seen the way he's dealt with the rest of the family. And so with a few minutes left, we'll start the journey, and then we'll finish it up next week. So Jacob put his children and his wives on camels. No, they didn't go into a big SUV with an RV. They were on camels. You saw the map a minute ago. Let's see if I can get there. They're all the way up north. And they're going to take camels down south. And they began their journey back to Isaac, his father, in the land of Canaan. All the flocks of animals that Jacob owned walked ahead of them. He carried everything with him that he had gotten while he lived in northwest Mesopotamia. Anybody ever walked behind a herd of cattle? It's very slow, but what's happening behind the animals? Is it dusty? Now when you have a good clean pasture or green pasture, right? But if you're behind, this is the desert area if you don't recall. And so that would be interesting to see how much dust was behind his flocks, because he had tremendous flocks. He had a tremendous herd. He had a lot of people pushing this herd down, going south. And can you imagine living in a small town along that route, and here comes Jacob and his family and entourage and his herds? It could have been hours, maybe even days for them to pass by you. The wealth of his that he had It was just tremendous. And in those days, that was impressive. I can't think of the analogy today because we don't really have a lot of animals in our backyard, at least I don't. And so just having a herd of something would be impressive. But at that time, it was a show of tremendous wealth. And he went south. So any comments on the story up to this point? This is where the ending of the movie, you have a commercial break, it's the end, and then they show you what's going to happen next week. Well, next week we're going to see we're going to see that Jacob and Esau meet up again and some things like that. So any comments at this point? Yes, Larry. Not trusting upon God leads to ruin, basically, is what Larry was talking about. And we can see that in the stories that we've been reading of the Old Testament here in Genesis. Anyone else? If not, then I'll let you go a few minutes early. So thank you for your attention today.